In a house in a Tokyo suburb, a man killed his wife and his small son. The house kept it, not the bodies. The rage. What came out of that house is a woman who comes down the stairs on her hands, one arm at a time, making a noise in her throat that is not a scream. A small boy in the attic who sounds like a cat. A hand out of the wet hair in the shower. You know those images even if you have never sat through the films, because they escaped the films a long time ago. That is the Grudge, and the rule underneath it is why it worked. Anybody who goes through that door is already dead, and it does not matter how long they stay or whether they believe a word of it. It does not haunt a family, it haunts an address. 12 films across 22 years, and the whole time a franchise insisting that the house is the monster. So this video is about where the Grudge actually came from. Who made it? What was in his head when he did? And the real building the internet has spent 6 years insisting is behind all of it. A yellow house on a triangular plot in Aichi that emptied 6 families in 20 years. One of them lasted 3 days. By the end of this, you will know exactly who connected that house to these films and the week they did it. Okay, there are 1,000 ghost films and most of them evaporate, so why did this one stick? I think it comes down to one design decision, and it is a cruel one. Most ghost stories give you a way out. There is a reason the dead are angry, and if you find the bones or say the name or make the apology, it stops. The film hands you the key in the third act. The Grudge took the key away. There is no negotiation in this curse. Nobody wronged Kayako. The people who die in that house did not hurt her, did not know her, and in most cases have never heard of her. A woman comes to the door because she works for a care agency. An estate agent shows the property. A schoolgirl walks past. That is the entire qualification. You were in the building. Think about how unfair that is. Every horror rule you have learned, do not say the name, do not read the book, do not go in the basement, assumes you can be careful. This one does not care whether you were careful. And Shimizu made it worse with the structure. The films are cut out of order, so you watch somebody's last afternoon after you have already seen them die. You are never following a survivor. You are handed one doomed person after another and shown in advance that none of it goes anywhere. The American remake opened on $39 million in one weekend. The reboot in 2020 got an F on CinemaScore, which 20 films in history have managed. 22 years of a story about a building that kills the people who go inside it. Which is why the question of whether that building exists became so attractive. I should tell you where this started because it matters for how you weigh the rest. Somebody sent me a Reddit thread. Paranormal forum, a few hundred upvotes, the yellow house that inspired the Grudge, and a comment section treating it as settled. That is the level most of this story lives on, and I am going to keep flagging which tier each claim comes from, because the gap between them turns out to be the whole video. So let me take the building first because it is real, and almost everything said about it is not. It stood in Ama City in Aichi on Prefectural Route 200, about half an hour west of Nagoya. 2 stories, wooden, completely ordinary to look at. Japanese people called it Sankaku no Ii, the triangle house, and the name is not about the roof, it is about the plot. The land came to a point, the way it does when 2 roads meet at an angle and somebody builds in the gap. Others called it the yellow house because it was painted plain yellow all over. I mention the color because you will see claims it was covered in black paint or black writing, and there is not a single source for that anywhere. And it emptied people out. After the original family, 6 separate households moved in over roughly 2 decades. Every one of them was gone inside 12 months. The shortest tenancy anybody documents is 3 days. 3 days. Think about what that involves. You have signed something, paid something, carried boxes up a staircase, and then inside 72 hours, you decide that whatever is wrong here is worth eating all of that to get away from. Nobody does that lightly. The property was managed and it was marketed. It kept going back on the market and it kept failing for 20 years until it stopped being a rental problem and became a destination. That is the part that is solid. Now for the story people tell about why. If this is the kind of hidden Japan you want more of, go ahead and subscribe, because this is the only thing this channel digs into. If you look this house up in English tonight, you will get a version of the following. The family who built it fell apart. In one telling, the husband was a gambler, the debts came in, and neither of them came out of the house alive. In another, the wife and children died in a crash on the motorway, and the husband died at home afterwards. In a third, it is a mortgage default and a double suicide. In a fourth, nobody is to blame and somebody simply died. Japanese sources have a phrase for this, shosetsu ari, which means there are several theories and they use it because there are. And here's the tier problem. Not one of those versions comes from a newspaper. They come from haunted spot databases, occult sites, and forum threads, and one researcher traced the oldest version he could find back to an archived personal webpage in an occult tabloid. There is no court record behind any of it, no police statement, and not one article by anybody who is paid to check. Then it escalates. 2 police officers who responded are supposed to have gone mad. Renovation contractors are supposed to have died within a week. And the centerpiece, the detail that made this house famous outside Japan, a television company is supposed to have brought Aiko Gibo out there, the most recognizable psychic on Japanese television in the 80s and 90s, and she is supposed to have refused to get out of the vehicle, and the episode was shelved and never aired. I want to be careful because I have told a version of that myself. Not one of those claims has a name attached to it, and not one has a date. The officers have no station. The contractors have no company. The Gibo story has no broadcaster, no crew, and no year, and it is built so that it cannot be checked, because the whole point is that the footage does not exist. And the phrasing is identical, word for word, across every site that carries it. That is not several people reporting a thing, that is one text being copied. So I went to the only record that cannot be copied. Japanese property is documented to a degree that would make most countries uncomfortable. Every transfer, every inheritance, and every demolition goes on file, with a date attached to it. And somebody went and pulled the file on this house. It was built on the 19th of May, 1976. It was sold to a man in Nagoya on the 15th of July, 1983. His son inherited it in 2011. And it was demolished in October or November of 2015, and the ground it stood on is a coin parking lot now. Read those dates again because they quietly dismantle several things at once. The original family did not die in that house. They built it, lived in it for 7 years, sold it, and moved on. 7 years is a short time to hold a house you have just built, and it is fair to wonder why. But it is not a crime, and nobody died in it in 1983. The contractor deaths and the dead company president do not survive either, because the registry shows the people involved as identifiable and alive. And then there is the graveyard claim, which is the oldest part of the whole story. It says the house was built on a badly relocated cemetery, which is a standard beat in Japanese haunted property lore and a serious thing to say about a family. Japan's National Mapping Agency keeps aerial photography going back to 1945, and you can look at that ground at every checkpoint since the war. Rice paddies every single time. And look, a story that turns out to be nothing is not a failure. But a graveyard is a specific accusation. Somebody made it up, and it stuck to a family's old address for 30 years. So the house is real, the emptying tenants are real, and essentially every explanation offered for them is not. Which leaves the actual question: what does any of this have to do with the Grudge? Takashi Shimizu was born on the 27th of July, 1972 in Gunma. In October 1997, he enrolled at the Film School of Tokyo, which had opened that same year, and 2 of the people teaching there matter: Kiyoshi Kurosawa, by then the most respected director in Japanese horror, and Hiroshi Takahashi, who had written Ring. His class assignment was about 3 minutes long, and it was called Kate Homon, Home Visit. A teacher goes to the house of a boy who has stopped coming to school and finds the boy's mother, dead, coming down the stairs towards him. Japanese sources call that short the prototype of the Grudge in those words. Everything you know about this franchise is already in a 3-minute student exercise made for a grade. Kurosawa saw it and recommended him to a television company. Takahashi introduced him to a producer, and then I found the thing that reframed this entire video, because it turns out to be the answer to the question I set out with. Shimizu has said, on the record more than once, that he has never had a paranormal experience in his life. Not one. The man who made the most frightening haunted house in modern cinema has never seen anything. When he is asked where the Grudge came from, he does not give you a house. He gives you a student film, a childhood fear of the inside of a closet, a noise he made as a kid until his parents told him to stop, a Buto troupe he saw performing with their bodies painted white, and the rise in reported domestic abuse cases in Japan at the time. Asked about the fractured chronology, the thing critics always compare to Pulp Fiction, he said it was not Tarantino at all. It was watching all 10 parts of Kieslowski's Decalogue back to back. A Polish television series about the 10 Commandments. That is the DNA. In 1998, a television station in Kansai commissioned Shimizu to make 2 short films for a horror anthology special. He wrote them at 30 minutes each and was told to cut them down to 3. The first is called Katasumi in a Corner. The second is called 44444444444 10 fours, because the Japanese word for 4 sounds like the word for death. They went out on the 27th of September, 1998. In the early afternoon is under 10% of somebody else's special. Katasumi is where Kayako appears for the first time, played by Takako Fuji. The other one is where Toshio appears, played by a boy called Daiki Sawada. Shimizu was paid 50,000 yen in total for both films together. That is under $400 at what the yen was doing in 1998. He had no assistant director. Under $400 for the 2 films that contain the first appearances of both characters. I keep turning that over and it keeps not getting less funny. Hold that number. It comes back at the end of this video, grown by a factor I still find slightly absurd. 2 years later, a video company came to him wanting a horror release, and the shoot they gave him is why this franchise looks the way it does. Toei Video wanted 2 straight-to-video films, and they wanted a longer title that would ride on the back of another ghost film that had done well. Shimizu refused it and insisted on 2 characters instead. Grudge, Curse. That is the whole Japanese title, and it is the one you know in English as The Grudge. Then they gave him the schedule. 10 days, one of them a mandatory day off, so 9 shooting days, and not 9 days for one film. 9 days for both of them, shot as a single block with no preparation and no storyboards. 9 days. 2 features. I have seen single scenes take longer than that, and I suspect, honestly, that the schedule is part of why it works. There was no time to light anything properly, no time to build a set, no time to be careful. What you are watching is a man with no money making decisions fast in somebody's borrowed house. They came out on video in February and April of 2000, played 1 week of late shows at a small cinema, and sold badly. Toei did not promote them. What happened instead is the thing that happens about twice a decade. People rented it and told other people to rent it. The tapes kept going out, and eventually a producer called Takashige Ichise asked Shimizu whether he wanted to make it as a film. That became the theatrical film, which reached Japanese cinemas on the 25th of January 2003 and took around 500 million yen. 2 years after that, an American remake opened on $10 million of budget and took 39 million in its first weekend and 187 million worldwide. So, from 50,000 yen for 2 shorts to a franchise that has taken over $300 million in American cinemas alone. And in all of that, at no point does anybody go to Ichi. So let me give you the address the internet should care about and does not. The Saeki house, the one you have in your head, with the stairs and the attic and the tape over the door, was Atelier Mikami House Studio B in Tokorozawa in Saitama. It is a house studio, a commercial property that exists to be rented out to film crews, and the detective's house and the neighbor's house were 2 more sets in the same compound. 2 separate Japanese location investigations arrive at that building independently. And Tokorozawa is about 155 miles from Ama City, roughly 250 kilometers in a different prefecture on the other side of the country's largest mountain range. For the American film in 2004, they did not even use that. The interiors were built on a soundstage at Toho Studios in Tokyo, where they make Godzilla. And I will admit that took some of the air out of it for me. All that time reading about a cursed address, and the answer is a booking form. The Tokorozawa house is gone now. Somebody who visited it as a film student describes walking through Studio B and finding the inside exactly as it looks on screen, and it was pulled down a few months later. So the actual haunted house of Japanese cinema was a rental property that nobody makes a pilgrimage to, and it has been demolished and almost nobody noticed. I find that funnier than I probably should. The most photographed haunted building in the genre was a set you could book by the day. Meanwhile, the two people at the center of the whole thing share a birthday, and that part is true. Toshio, the boy, has a birthday in the films, the 27th of July, 1987. Shimizu chose that date on purpose, and the reason is not what you would guess from the films. Toshio is him. His producer pointed it out before he had noticed it himself. Shimizu was a child who scared easily. He loved the inside of a closet, treated it like a secret base, and then saw something frightening and could never go back in. So when he needed a birthday for a small boy who lives inside a house he cannot leave, he used his own. And on top of that, there is a coincidence, which I checked in 3 separate places because I did not believe it. Takako Fuji, the woman who plays Kayako, was born on the 27th of July, 1972. The same day as Shimizu, the same year. Both of them confirm it, both call it coincidence, and it is verifiable in both their public records. So the director, the actress who plays the ghost, and the ghost's son all share a birthday, and only 1/3 of that was deliberate. Of everything I dug up for this video, that is the fact I would keep, and not the registry, or the timeline, or any of the debunking. A man who has never seen a ghost, casting a woman born on his own birthday to play a thing he invented out of being frightened of a cupboard as a child. You could not write that as fiction. Somebody would tell you it was too neat. Fuji came from underground theater. Shimizu saw her playing a maid, dressed in white with almost no lines, and something clicked that he still cannot articulate. The first thing they shot ran past midnight in a house he borrowed from a friend, and the wig came from a party shop. The crawl he demonstrated to her himself, every time. Carry your whole body weight on your arms and let none of it show. No strain, no sweat, and above all, no embarrassment. That is where the most frightening woman in modern horror comes from. A borrowed house, a party wig, and a director on the floor showing an actress how to move. I nearly cut this next part because it happens 200 years before anything else in the video. It is in because once I had read it, I could not stop seeing it everywhere else. In July 1825, at the Nakamuraza Theater in Edo, a playwright called Tsuruya Namboku, the 4th premiered Tokaido Yotsuya Kaiden. It is the story of Oiwa, a woman poisoned and disfigured by her husband who dies and comes back for him. And every long-haired, vengeful woman you have ever seen on screen in any country is downstream of it. And while he was writing it, Namboku took 2 real crimes out of the Edo news of his own time and wove them in. 2 servants who had murdered their masters and were executed on the same day. And a samurai who nailed his unfaithful wife and her lover to a wooden board and threw them into the Kondo River. Real executions, real bodies. Grafted onto a story he had invented, specifically so that an audience would sit there wondering how much of it had actually happened. The most famous Japanese ghost story of all time is a fake true story. It was built that way, on purpose, by a professional, 200 years ago. And the shrine associated with Oiwa in Tokyo will still tell you, politely, that the play is fiction, and that the real woman of that family had a good marriage and helped dig her household out of debt. So when the internet decided that the Grudge needed a real house behind it, it was not doing something new. It was doing the exact thing the genre was founded on. It just did it faster, and I can show you the week. The timeline is tight enough to be uncomfortable. In December 2019, an English-language entertainment site published the biggest explainer anyone had written on whether The Grudge is based on a true story. It covers the vengeful spirit tradition, Yotsuya Kaiden, and the Japanese urban legends. It does not mention a yellow house, a triangular plot, Aichi, Nagoya, or Ama City anywhere in the piece. That is your control. As of December 2019 in English, this connection does not exist. On the 3rd of July 2020, Netflix released a Grudge miniseries called Origins. The marketing line in Japanese translates as, "The cursed house really existed." And there is a Japanese article carrying that headline, published the day before, which has a sponsored content notice at the bottom of it. That is paid copy, not journalism. The house in that series is painted yellow. 3 days after the release, on the 6th of July, a specialist translator of Japanese horror published a piece connecting the two. And she is careful. In one sentence, she uses 4 separate hedges, said to be, in the very broadest sense, supposed, fictional, and then the hedges get sanded off. And I should say the obvious thing, which is that I am now one more voice on the internet telling you what is true about this house. The difference I can offer is that everything in the last 5 minutes has a date on it. By 2021, it is on Reddit as a flat statement with a comment section agreeing. By 2023, it is in blog headlines. By April of this year, there's a video titled "The Real House of Death" that inspired the whole thing, with no hedges left in it at all. That is a fact being manufactured in front of you across 6 years, and the seed is one line of marketing copy that somebody paid for. I have been doing this long enough to expect the internet to get things wrong. What I did not expect was to be able to put a date on it. In October 2020, 4 months after all this started, Takashige Ichiase sat down for an interview with the Japanese edition of Wired. Ichiase produced every single one of these films. He is the man who asked Shimizu to turn the video films into a feature. If anybody on Earth is entitled to tell you what is real in this franchise, it is him. He was asked about the real crimes referenced in the Netflix series because that show does use them. Real news broadcasts from the Japanese 80s and 90s play in the background of it. What he said was that it is not directly connected to the actual incidents, but that he wanted people to share that sense of dread, so he put them in deliberately. That is the producer of the franchise, in print, describing the technique rather than the connection. He is not claiming a link, he is claiming an atmosphere, and he is telling you he built it deliberately. He also said where the house in that series came from. It was a real second-hand house they went out and found, and they chose it because it looked the way they wanted it to look. Not because anything had ever happened in it. And there is one more absence worth sitting with. I went looking for the cursed production. The accidents, the deaths, the crew hospitalized, the shoot abandoned. Every horror franchise this size has that folklore attached to it. There is nothing. A Japanese blog that catalogs 13 cursed Hollywood productions in detail with names and dates does not include The Grudge, and that same blog has a separate article covering all 12 of the films. They knew the franchise, they had nothing to report. The most famous cursed house film ever made has one of the cleanest production records in modern horror. And is that not the strangest sentence in this whole video? 12 films about a building that kills everyone who enters it, and nobody so much as broke an ankle. Before I get to the last part, do me one quick favor and tap the like button. I am still getting this channel off the ground, and it helps more than you would think. There is one more thing, and it is the part that stopped being funny for me. In 2004, promoting the American remake, Shimizu mentioned that the address of the real filming house was being kept from the press because after the Japanese films became a hit, fans had started turning up at it. That is 22 years ago, and it is already a problem. Now go to Nagasaki. In Sasa Town, in the northwest of the prefecture, there is a house that has circulated online since the mid-2000s as the Grudge House. It has no connection to the films whatsoever. It simply looks like it. The owner moved back in. And the tier matters again here because what I know comes from Japanese forum posts and not from a reporter. Several of them, independently, describe him as furious about the trespassing, and at least one visitor has been picked up by police after going in on a dare. I believe it because those accounts agree without copying each other, which is the opposite of what the murder story does. There is a real family in a real house dealing with strangers in the garden, because a building 150 miles away that was never in the films acquired a story on the internet. And that is where this stops being an interesting puzzle for me. Somewhere in Nagasaki, there's a man who has to come out of his own front door and ask people to leave again because of a sentence somebody typed 20 years ago and never checked. And the actual house from the actual films in Tokorozawa sat empty as a rental studio and was quietly demolished, and nobody went to see it off. So, the cursed Japanese house behind the Grudge. It is real. It emptied 6 families in 20 years, one of them in 3 days, and nobody has ever explained that with a document. That part I am not taking away from you. What is not real is the line to the films. That was assembled in 1 week in July 2020 out of paid marketing copy and a single carefully hedged sentence, and the hedges did not survive the year. But look at what that tells you. A story about a house that destroys everyone who enters it turned out to have no house behind it, so we went and found one and attached it ourselves. Nanboku needed 2 real executions nailed into a stage play to manage that in 1825. We did it in 72 hours. The curse in the Grudge was never in a building. It gets passed from one person to the next, and everyone who touches it hands it on. That is the plot of the films, and it turns out to be how they got their history. So what is the last thing you repeated because it sounded true and never once checked? Tell me below and be honest because I read them all.